I'm Matt, the owner of Exoracing, and today we're going to show you how much it costs to build an all-wheel drive Civic. So I've built two all-wheel drive Civics for myself, one including my EK that we'll show you here. We're going to be using this as the pricing base today. So we've also sorted out multiple all-wheel drive kits for our customers, loads of different budgets, so by the end of this you'll be able to figure out what you want to use and what you don't. So I'm going to assume you've already got a Civic for this, so I'm not going to add things in like rear trailing arms as a whole, and I'm just going to assume you've already got them. So for this I used our B Series Civic as a base. We used all the Mark 1 CRV parts, but if you have a K Series, you're going to want to use the Mark II CRV parts. So starting from the front of the car, we've got the Mark 1 CRV gearbox, we got the transfer case, prop, rear diff and rear shafts, and that was £300. We actually found that on Facebook Marketplace, so that was an absolute bargain. So we already had the S9B gearbox on the car beforehand. The only bits that we actually needed out of this were the gears and the shafts, but I would estimate this would be around the £300 mark, depending on if you can find the gearbox or not. Bearing in mind we only need those bits, you can just buy the gear set itself. So we then went to get a Freelander prop shaft and viscous, because we wanted it to control the power delivery to the rear, and that was about the £200 mark, I think, around there somewhere. Okay, so parts cost total. We've got the S9B gearbox, which was £300. We've got the CRV SBXM gearbox, which is the Mark 1 gearbox. We've got the CRV transfer case, CRV prop shaft, CRV rear diff, and that is £300. And then lastly, we've got the Freelander prop and viscous coupler, and that was £200. So that brings the section here to £800 in total. Okay, so now we're on to the aftermarket parts. This section is going to be where most of the money spent, as you can probably imagine. There's going to be quite a few aftermarket parts in here that make up the whole all-wheel drive kit, so let's dive into it. So I'm going to break this down into a couple of sections. Firstly, we've got the gearbox and shifter setup, then we've got the rear wheel drive parts, then we have fuel system, then we're going to have exhaust, fabrication and miscellaneous parts. So we're going to start with the gearbox, go from the front of the car backwards. So the gearbox, we had the S9B gear set, so we had to use the Speed Factory front wheel drive to all-wheel drive conversion to make the S9B gear set fit in the CRV box. So this meant we could use the S9B gear set, which is the longest B Series set, in the all-wheel drive gearbox. We then upgraded the synchros inside the box to Synchrotech carbon synchros, and we used a wave track all-wheel drive diff. There is actually another way of doing this a bit cheaper. You can use a H22 diff, but you do need to machine it down and it's a bit more of a pain. So we went with the plug and play option, which is the wave track. So for engine mounts, we had to use the Hasbro specific all-wheel drive engine mounts. This is because the front wheel drive mounts are a little bit different on the gearbox side, and on the rear side as well, the bracket's a bit different to like miss past the transfer case. So shifter and cables, the shift cables, we used were the K-tuned B-all drive cables, because at the time they were the only company making cables. Now Hybrid Racing I think make them, and there are a couple other companies, so you can get them a bit cheaper. So the CL7 shifter has the same mounting points as the B-all drive cables, so that was a direct bolt in. We didn't have to use the CRV shifter, we could use a nice shiny upgraded one. So the last thing we used on the shifter side was the K-tuned firewall grommet. So this is where it's got rubber on the inside and the cables can go through it, so it doesn't rub against the firewall and cause any problems in the future. So that is everything from the shifter side. Okay, on to the gearbox parts cost. So we've got the Speed Factory front wheel drive to all-wheel drive conversion kit. That was £524.99. We've got the Synchrotech carbon synchro kit, which is £419.95. We've got the wave track B-all drive diff, and that was £1,095. We've got Hasbro B-all drive 75A engine mount kit, which is £633.33. We've got the K-tuned B-all drive shifter cables, which is £419.99. We've got the Hybrid Racing Accord CL7 shifter, that's £473. We've got the Hybrid Racing CL7 base plate, which is £193. And then lastly, we've got the K-Tune firewall grommet, which is £64.02. So this brings the running total in this section up to £4,623.28. So now we get onto the nice bit. This is the rear of the car. So this is where all the magic comes in and makes the rear wheels turn. So starting with the rear trailing arms, we use the S1 built DIY conversion kit. So this is hubs, bearings and gusset plates. This converts the rear trailing arms to actually take the drive shafts. Next thing on the list is to find a way to move the drive shafts out of the way, because currently the suspension is sat exactly in the place the drive shafts would be. So this is where we went with the S1 built rear shock brackets. This basically moves the coilover back a little bit and allows the drive shafts to go straight through the centre. So for the rear drive shafts, we went with Insane shafts, the 500 horsepower kit, and we ended up having to order 2 passenger shafts because the diff's now centralised, and having the passenger and the driver's side, it ended up being one was way longer than the other. So 2 passenger shafts ended up being like the perfect length apart, and so yeah, that's what we went for. So to mount the rear diff, we opted for the innovative rear diff brace kit. We only had to do a little bit of welding on this on either side. They do actually include in the kit riv nuts, where you can just riv nut it to it, but we decided against it and just decided to weld the plates on. So the next bit was to get the prop shaft to work. So we sent both prop shafts away, and we basically got the machine shop to merge them together essentially. So we got the CRV ends on both ends, we got different U-joints, the 1310s upgraded throughout, and we also told them the correct length. So they put a slip joint at the front, and they basically cut and welded it to length and then balanced it, powder coated it and sent it back to us, and that just fit up perfectly. So because we're now using a viscous coupler in the middle, we had to do something about the rear diff. So we bought the locking plates from S1 built, which sit in the rear diff, and it basically means that the viscous can transfer power to the rear and then the rear is locked. Just a quick note before we go into the pricing in this section, we did have to completely take the fuel tank down. So later on we're going to have to price up a fuel cell. There are a couple of different options, but we decided to go with the boot. I just want to put this in here just as a side note before we go any further. So the first bit we have is the S1 built DIY rear trailing arm kit. That was £557. The next bit is the S1 built rear locking plates. They were £157. Next up, we got the innovative all-wheel drive diff brace kit. That was £623.22. Then we've got Insane shafts, the 500 horsepower Insane shaft kit. That was £500. Next up, we've got the S1 built rear shock brackets. They were £153. And lastly, we've got the Freelander prop modifications when we sent it away, and that was £250. So that brings the running total in this section to £6,863.50. Okay, so now we've basically priced all of the all drive parts, we need to move on to the fuel system. So like I said a minute ago, we had to take the fuel tank down to be able to get the prop in the way. So there are a couple of different options here. We decided to go with fuel tank in the boot. We went with a nuke fuel cell, but there are companies like FCS, for example, where they mount underneath the car and they just kind of go around the prop. So it is an option. So we decided to go for the new Performance 40 litre fuel cell. This also includes the integrated swell pot. We've got 2 AEM 340 litre an hour E85 pumps, DW 200 lift pump, and then we've got the level sender and the dual pump fitting kit. Last thing we need to do for the fuel side is to make the lines. So we need to get lines from the front to the back, ×2, because we've got feed and return, and then we need the fittings and anything else that connects to the fuel rail. So because this can be very different to every car, like for example we went with AN8 feed, AN6 return, I'm just going to average this at £250 for the fuel, for actually the fitting and line side, but this could change up or down depending on where you go with this. Okay, so starting with the fuel cell, we've got the new Performance 40 litre fuel cell with the integrated swell pot, and that was £1,084.80. Next up, we got the dual pump fitting kit. That is £49.20. Next, we've got the new Performance level sender. That was £87. Then we've got 2 AEM 340 litre an hour E85 pumps. They were £319.28. DW 200 pump, that was £107.86. And lastly, we've got the fuel lines and fittings. Obviously this is only an average, but we are just going to put £250 down there. So running total in this whole section for the fuel system, we've got £8,761.64. So this section could be optional. If you've got a drag car, for example, you might have the exhaust out the bonnet, but we're just going to go through as if this is a road car and as if you need like a full exhaust all the way to the back. So to make this fully work, it is completely custom. So we're just going to include an estimate, I guess, on this one, where You're going to have back box, you're going to have like a sports cat, silencer, and like any other pipe you need to make it work from the downpipe all the way back. Just in case you do want to see us making ours, by the way, I'm going to put it up on screen. It's just going to be in the top right. So if you want to have a look at us making the exhaust, that's where Sam did a full all the way through. You can have a look at that. So once the exhaust is made, the last thing we had to do were the brake lines. So we had to move the brake lines from the passenger side over to the driver's side, because we could not get the exhaust all the way down the driver's side just because of where everything was sat. So we've added brake line relocation, which just moves from one side to the other to this as well, which goes back to the rear calipers. So we've got the full all drive custom exhaust. Like I said a minute ago, this includes everything all the way back from like oval in the pipe and anything else we need. I'm going to estimate this at about the 1200 mark, but it depends if you can fabricate and loads of other different variables. We're just going to go 1200 for the sake of this. The last thing in this section is a custom brake line. This is front to rear, so it's from the prop valve to the rear brakes, and we're going to estimate again, depends on if you make it yourself or not, we're going to estimate at about the £100 mark. So that brings the running total so far up to £10,061.64. So final note, this is for any random things that we've missed, such as like wiring, bolts, or just anything else, just random miscellaneous parts that we need. The one thing on the list that I did forget on our car specifically was wiring. So this was when Phil came down, he did wiring to the fuel pumps, relays, and loads of different bits like that we forgot. And we've also had Scott do some wiring as well. And yeah, wiring was just kind of a hidden cost that I didn't add in on this. So the last thing to price on this list was the fuel tank level sender, wiring, pumps, relays, and all the other different wiring bits. We're going to estimate this at about the £150 mark, and that just includes a couple of people's time and some wiring and everything else. So we are now at the final conclusion. Ding, 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 ding. So, full total of everything we've included in this video so far is, drum roll please, we've got £10,211.64. So this was everything. If you were to buy everything on my car at retail and you were going to do the whole drive conversion, that is how much it would cost. Again, like I said in the beginning of this video, you can do this cheaper. 10,000 does seem like quite a lot, but for example, if you're using the CRV shifter rather than the hybrid one, you can cut £473 out of this. So you can do it way cheaper. This is just what we used on ours, and hopefully just as a baseline guide, this will help you get further with yours. So we do have a full build documenting our build on this. If you do want to see, we'll put the video links in here, and we'll probably put them in the description as well for you to have a look. Some of these are going over just various parts of the car. Other bits are like the full all-drive system, why we used everything. Obviously this is mainly like a guide just to show you how much everything costs, but if you do want to go through and see, you know, everything start to finish, like how we installed it all and why we used the parts we did, then that's probably a good video for you to watch. If you did enjoy this though, or you think it's going to be helpful for any of your friends, then please share it. Make sure to subscribe, and we have loads more videos coming. If there are any videos you guys do want, let us know, because we're going to go and kind of do as many informational videos as we can. Whether it's like four-wheel drive or turbo or anything else you want, then we're going to try and do as many as we can. So we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.